Guys, welcome back to another salvage auction analysis, and this one is very special. A 2004 Porsche Carrera GT. This car is the holy grail for a lot of enthusiasts out there. After just watching less than 2 weeks ago, the Goon Squad McLaren Senna at auction, to see a car of this caliber run that close together to that McLaren Senna, and arguably a better car, as some would probably say. It's just really cool to be able to go through it with you guys. This one is out in California. It is listed under the Crashed Toys moniker, which means that they give it like a little bit extra promotion. There's usually extra pictures. They really just try and get the word out on these very expensive cars a little bit more. This one, the estimated value we'll get to here in a little bit, but pretty much one of the highest that's ever run at salvage auction before. Mileage on it is 4,400, which I guess is probably still relatively low for that car. I can't imagine that people drive them a lot, but that car being 20 years old at this point, only having 4,400 miles, seems like it's pretty good. It is listed as a California salvage certificate, which is important because it's not a certificate of destruction or one of the brands that is going to make it virtually impossible to register the car again. We're still seeing a lot of hurricane cars that are coming out of Florida that are certificates of destruction, meaning that they are not supposed to be allowed back on the road again. Now, new to Copart, I don't know if this is just strictly with the Crash Toys or if this is something that they're going to start incorporating into all their auctions, is the engine start video. I don't hear any weird knocks, taps, rattles, anything along those lines. Given the accident damage that we're going to examine here in a little bit, my only concern would be something like an oil cooler that ran up to the front of the car that got knocked off. This car is a pure sale. Been watching this car for a couple weeks. Ever since it popped up, it's been a pure sale the entire time, which I thought was a little bit risky on the insurance holder's part for this car, just because if it didn't bid what they ultimately want, the car's going at that point. But I think that it probably played into their hand, being that this is pre-bid to $510,000. We're gonna ask the question if we think that it's worth that after we go through the pictures and see what it ultimately sells for. But getting this car at right now a quarter of its retail value, even with the damage, has to be a win in a lot of people's book. From this side here, she doesn't look so bad. And then as we keep scrolling, you see the bumper gap there, which indicates that pretty much all the damage is going to be around on the other side. What is interesting is that the rear bumper itself doesn't really have a lot of damage. I was expecting that quarter to be damaged. And the bumper, it's definitely got a crack right there, but I was expecting some more stuff to be moved around, seeing how it's hanging off in this previous picture. That's a little bit curious. It also has damage to the wheel. It doesn't have any actual air in the tire. And I guess really diving into it a little bit further, there's definitely damage in that lower rocker. So this is probably one of those scenarios that whatever they hit, they then ended up going over a curb or through a ditch, something along those lines later on, because this right here on this front corner indicates that they hit something solid, a guardrail, one of those like cement barriers. As I mentioned earlier, my concerns would be coolers at the front of this car. That to me looks like kind of like a lower pressure radiator hose. I'm not familiar with how these Carrera GTs are set up. I almost called the thing a Cayman, but that's where my experience is. And I have to imagine that the cooler system is probably somewhat similar to all the other Porsches, the Caymans, the 911s, where it has a 2 or 3 radiator system at the front of the car with lines running through what would normally be a transmission tunnel. Man, that picture right there is wild, with a seemingly okay driver's side headlight and everything around it being damaged. At first glance, it looked like maybe that hood survived, but it definitely went maybe under something in front of it. It looks like there's a lot of scrapes, gouges. That driver fender is completely destroyed. And then you get to the damage up there with the windshield and the roof. Check that out. Where did this get posted?
You can just Google it. It's on Reddit, but
Well, I should have done that because my brother, as I'm doing this, heard from the other office that is, I guess, the accident. It looks like it went off-roading and then finally ended up into a tree.
Yeah, I would guess it careened off the road for a good bit first.
So all the damage under the car probably happened first, and then ultimately it ended up resting into a tree, probably when it lost a little bit of speed, and that, seeing it makes sense. Moving to the interior, there is obviously some blown airbags and then the damage to the windshield. The dash airbag would obviously be the concern. I don't know how easy it is to get a Carrera GT dashboard. Most of the time when a dash airbag blows, there's not a way to repair it. You have to replace the dash itself. Again, me not being super familiar with these, maybe there's an option there, but it looks like it's really only that one side of the dashboard, so at least that's good. 2 airbags. Luckily, the windshield doesn't look like it did much damage to the dash. I have to imagine that cluster there is leather wrapped, I'm going to assume. So you probably have to look at replacing that. There's virtually no way that walked away unscathed. Really cool color combo on this car. The interior colors make up a little bit for the exterior. Silver is just, I'm not a fan of silver cars. They don't do anything for me. A car this wild and crazy, silver is, it's just boring. I hate to use that word, but having a little bit of an interior with a cool color combo with the saddle in black, I think is definitely a cool touch. Sometimes there are additional pictures, which this one doesn't look to have, but it does have a build sheet, which I have to imagine for, excuse me, a lot of Carrera owners. This is important. I don't know the person that's going to buy this, if it's ultimately going to matter with this car's history. Normally the build sheets are important for just documenting and the, I guess, the preservation that it's, as OEM as it possibly can be. This car, it's going to need a lot replaced. Well, there's pretty much only one thing left to do, and it's to watch this thing run at auction. The only other thing, if I hadn't mentioned it previously, estimated retail value, $1.95 million. This is the second highest retail value car that I can remember seeing run at auction. The only other one being the Bugatti, I think it was a Chiron, that ran at auction probably about 2 years ago now. But it's going to be really, really interesting to see what this sells for, and then also where the bidding action is coming from. Always with these high-end cars, I'm curious if the international bidders are going to ultimately buy this car and export it to another country. Moment of truth time. El Salvador as the high bidder. My brother was just putting in his bet that he thinks that Texas might be in the running. Seeing Georgia is surprising because that makes me think the Goon Squad boys, but I thought that they might be kind of tapped out on money after buying that Senna. International bidders, though. Wow. It looks like there's only 2 people in on this. Oh. Even given the damage, this still feels like a good price for this car, given how expensive they are now. Which is crazy, because I think this is like half of what they originally sold for. Wow, look at this. Oh, see if they hit them for an extra, $1,000 here. Oh, man. This is wild. Wow. Double bonus time is dirty. Sold. There you have it. Absolutely wild to see a smash Carrera GT sell for north of $500,000. I don't really know how I feel about it, to be completely honest. My initial impression is that I feel like that's not too bad for that car. unless there's something that I truly don't understand about them. Even with that car going out of the country and them having to export it and taxes, transportation, that type of stuff, I feel like with the repairs on that car, you know, assuming they're done fairly well, I feel like you're talking about somewhere in the neighborhood of that car being, you know, $1 million total investment, which if you can't get into one of those for anywhere close to 1.75 million now or north of 2, that really doesn't sound like that bad of a deal. Now, I am very curious if that Georgia bidder was Goon Squad. And there's other people that are in Georgia that obviously, you know, have money to throw at that stuff. But at the same time, going to a YouTuber or something like that, making money on the rebuild is definitely something that is plausible. It's just, I was under the assumption that they were out of money given all the McLarens that they have in their collection right now. So let me know down in the comments. What do you guys think? Do you think for, you know, basically the ultimate Porsche dream car, maybe besides a 918 Spyder, is that money given the damage justified? Is it worth it? If you had the funds, would you do it?